And now, more Utalk. Now,
for those of you who don't realize who our guest is on the show today, Lance Wilder, he is he designed Springfield and the whole world of The Simpsons. So
Yes.
It's very cool. Lance, it's great to have you, man. Thank you for taking the time. And we're going to just jump right into it. When I was younger, Katie, I've talked to Katie about this too, and Larissa, but I could draw stick figures. I actually used to draw houses and things like that. But I understand you started drawing at 18 months.
Yes. I'd often sit in front of the TV, Sesame Street and cartoons and stuff. And my mom tells the story. She gave me crayons and pencils and paper to keep me busy while I watched stuff when I was a little kid. And I started drawing the stuff I saw on TV, and that's how it started.
Okay, does your mom still have copies of those things? I mean, it's like they should be in a museum or something, right?
Oh, if you know my mom, I'm sure she has everything. Her and my dad battle over how much stuff she has kept over the years. So
sounds like my mom and dad. It's like boxes of stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
Mom, we don't need all this stuff. Okay, so I guess the question first, let's jump ahead and then we'll jump back. What is it that you do on The Simpsons?
Well, I am one of the background designers. When we started, the entire design department was about 5 or 6 people. The design department is basically, we design all the characters and costume changes, all the prop design, which is anything that animates that's not a character. Could be a car, a pencil, one of Homer's contraptions, anything at all. And then there's background design, where we do, all the stores and signs and jokes and billboards and whatever the writers write, we come up with it in the style of The Simpsons that Matt Groening created. So that's basically, we started with 5 or 6 back in 1990. I think our design department right now is about at least like 18 people, 18, 19, 20 people.
Whoa.
And when the show went high def, especially after the movie, everybody just wanted to punch up the quality and the widescreen and the high def, so it just took more time and energy. And so over the last few years, we've expanded. My goodness, I think we have. Oh my goodness, there's got to be at least 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 background designers. And if it's a big show, we might ask some of the background layout people to help us out with a few things. But it's great. But it's just the show's expanded. It's just a lot more work. We needed more people.
It's way more than the average viewer. I was just watching the show the other night, and I wasn't putting that number together, with all those people. Now, I got to go back to something you said. In the 90s, this show has been around for a while.
It has. The very first episode, well, it was for the Tracy Ullman show. They have the little shorts from 1987 to 89 on Fox. Was very new at the time. I was in college at Rhode Island School of Design. And they decided, people liked them. They were very crude, limited animation. But James L. Brooks, who's done a ton of stuff in Hollywood, from the Mary Tyler Moore Show, Taxi, Rhoda, all those great shows that he helped create and run. Oh, classics. He has an incredible list of shows that I grew up watching. But he had the idea to let's turn this thing into 13. Let's do 13 episodes and give it a shot. And so the first one that aired was December 17th, 1989. It was the Simpsons roasting on an open fire, the Christmas special.
Yeah.
So, and then then in January 14th of 1990, after the holidays were over, they started airing the rest of the 13 episodes. And it caught on so quickly. Basically, my friends and I, we recorded all the shows. And I very quickly, since the first show, I became a fan. And with each passing episode, they were still well written, still well executed. I just became a bigger and bigger and bigger fan my senior year through the winter and spring of 1990. And I did not have a job. I was graduating. There's no way I was moving home. I love my parents, but there's no way I'm moving home. And I needed a job.
Yeah.
And so I started looking into it. I heard they got picked up for 24 shows for a second season. I think I was watching Entertainment Tonight, and I heard that, and we were so excited because we were such big fans of the show. And I'm thinking, man, if they're going to do a lot more shows, they're going to need people. I should look into this, so I did.
Sure. That's how you got started in it. Then it was so you were a fan to begin with. You had recorded all these shows, and you got word that they were going to expand, and so you started looking through things, finding out how to apply or find out even if how they were hiring and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, it was before the internet. Boy, the internet would have really helped me out. But it's kind of, I mean, what I did, I recorded all the shows. I recorded the credits, which some people think, who cares? But I wanted to see who all the people were creating this show. And I saw their names and who did what. And I went to we had like a reference library at the school that listed animation studios. I saw it was Klasky Chupo Animation Studio, who did the first, Tracy Ullman, and the first 3 seasons. They also created Rugrats and Wild Thornberrys and a lot of things after that. For Nickelodeon, when back then, believe it or not, all these cable channels were new. Nickelodeon was new, the Disney Channel was new, and anyway, so
that's cool because you're in on the ground floor, on stuff. Yeah,
animation was just coming back in the late 80s. I mean, Who Framed Roger Rabbit was huge. Steven Spielberg did a show called Amazing Stories, and one of the animated shorts in that was something called The Family Dog that Academy Award winner animator Brad Bird did that, which is still one of my favorites. And he ended up being a storyboard consultant for years and helping us out on The Simpsons.
Wow.
Matter of fact, he did one of the original Krusty shows, one of the original 13, and helped out with all that stuff. And but anyway, I was able to look up the studio and who did what, found the phone number and called. And I talked to the person in charge of hiring and expanding, and I explained what a fan I was, and I said, "Are you hiring? I heard you got picked up." And she said, "Yeah, what do you like to do?" And I listed a couple things, and they sent me 4 tests. I failed all 4 because I didn't know what I didn't know what I was doing. I've done some animation, and I like it, but it's not my forte. It's we have incredibly talented people that animate who have worked for Disney and Warner Brothers and everybody, Pixar over the years, and. But The Simpsons, it's very simple, which makes you think it's easy. But if you're off just a little bit, it looks bad. So there's kind of a fine art to it where you got to be right on model. And I didn't understand any of that. So I called them back, and she said, "Well, what do you mainly like to do?" And I said, "Well, I love architecture. I like creating stuff. I like doing children's books and creating scenery and scenes and things. I know perspective really well. I know composition." And she goes, "Well, we're definitely in need of background artists." And I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And then at the last second, she said, "Well, we need a background design artist, background layout, background design." So she sent me the tests, and I said, "Could you do me a favor? Could you find out from the directors if they liked anything and what they didn't like or what they're looking for? That would really help me out." She did that, and they gave me a list of a few things to keep in mind. So I basically, they asked me to design inside the Springfield Mall.
Okay.
That was one. The break room.
These are the tests you're talking about now.
Yes, yes, the tests. And the break room at the power plant, which I did. And I would reference the videos I recorded to get the style right and the little details that they were already putting in the show. So I wanted mine to match.
Sure.
That it looked like I took it right from the original 13 episodes. Right. So I put in a lot of the details that they'd already been using. And then I put it all together and was going to FedEx it out the next morning. And I know it sounds weird, but this is the true story. I had a dream. That inner voice just said, "Lance, really show them you know your perspective and how to draw and that you really get it, that you can really do this." So I woke up and I did a 3-point perspective, which is basically like looking up stairs and pipes and knobs and dials inside the power plant, like a vertical pan.
Yeah.
And I spent the next day working on that. And I called the lady back and I said, "I've got it done. I threw an extra one in there and I'm going to FedEx it out." And she's like, "Great." So I did. And about, my goodness, 36 hours later, she called and she said, "I got great news for you. We got the test, showed the directors. A, this is great. B, they were really impressed you followed all their directions, to follow the directors.
Yeah.
And then they said that third one you put in with the staircase and everything, just nailed it. They're like, that looks fantastic. It looks like the show, your perspective. Really cool. When can you start?" And And that was the second week of May, 1990. And I wasn't graduating until like June 1st or 2nd. So I said, well, I graduate in like 2.5 weeks. I can move my stuff back to my parents and I can be out in Hollywood. I don't know how, when, or where, but I will get there the first few days of June. And that was it. I actually signed. I went to the mailroom because they were the only one that had a new invention called the fax machine. So I
You're dating yourself.
Yes, I know. The fax machine was the new thing. So they wanted my driver's license and to fill out a form, and I did, just to, make sure that I was who I said I was. And they said, this is all great. We'll let us know when you get here. And so it was a whirlwind. But to make a long story short, my uncle and my dad helped me get a studio apartment up in the Hollywood Hills for a month just to get my feet on the ground. And I went in, it was June 6th of 1990. I met them all, signed the paperwork. They gave me a tour. And the funny thing was I got to meet all these people, and I recognized everybody's name and what they did from the credits from watching the show. So I knew who they were. And I met everybody in the design department, and they gave me a desk. And I wasn't supposed to start till the following Monday, but I'm like, I'm just sitting around. I don't know anybody. I'm ready to go. So on June 7th, 1990, I came in. I was working with director David Silverman, one of the originals who directed the movie, Brad Bird, Mac Groening, creator of the show, and I was scared out of my mind. But they said, we're doing a Halloween special. Well, I loved the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. Matter of fact, there's a poster behind me from that Treehouse of Horror hanging up. One of my favorites. And I'm like, a Halloween show? That sounds like fun. So they said, well, do you know Edgar Allan Poe? And I'm like, sure. I grew up in New England. And they said, so the third act of the original Treehouse of Horror was Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. And that's what they gave me to design. There was a little hallway outside the door, but then there were all the books and fireplace and all that stuff. And that was the first show that I worked on. And I didn't know what I was doing, but they helped me out. And everybody was really great from day one. And that was just over 30 years ago. It's amazing. And
you've been on the show since that time, that amount of time?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
That's crazy.
I've helped out on other things, but I've never left The Simpsons. What
are some of the other things that you've helped out on, that you've been involved in? I think Rugrats was one, right?
Yes. Since the studio at the time, Arlene Klasky and Gabor Chupa, they created Rugrats for Nickelodeon. And we were having a little bit of a downtime, and I designed, I think, the first 5 shows. I designed and laid out, helped with the first few shows of that. One other thing, we did other specials, like Edith Ann with Lily Tomlin was a special. Duckman with Jason Alexander was some of the other ones that I did along the side.
Nice.
But one of the other cool things that I was asked to do a little while later was I met with Mike Judge, who created Beavis and Butthead, and Greg Daniels, who was a writer on The Simpsons, and they were doing a little show called King of the Hill, and they brought me and a couple other people in to come up with the King of the Hill, the house. And so so I actually ended up designing, if you've ever seen King of the Hill, the entire kitchen, the living room, the hallway, the entryway, and all that that they needed for the first few shows. So my name does appear on the first episode or two, which is kind of cool. But yeah, half the Hill House, and they kept everything I did all those years. So it's always cool to watch. And I have a cell signed by Mike Judge and Greg Daniels of the family in the living room, which is really cool.
Oh, nice.
But that was a very cool thing.
Have you recorded those credits so you can see your name there and all that?
Actually, I do have the DVDs, so it's easy. Okay. It's easier on DVDs. We have seen it on TV.
Okay.
And I freeze framed it. The kids are like, "What? Your name's on something other than The Simpsons? What?" Or the first few episodes of Rugrats. The kids used to watch that too, and so it is kind of weird seeing my name on other stuff. But
I'll bet. Now, let's go back for a moment on something. You came all the way from Massachusetts, to SoCal with no contract. Because you said
officially, yes. Officially, no contract. However, the day that they said, when can you start, I said, what do I have to do? They said, do you have access to a fax machine? And so they wanted to make sure I was who I said I was. So I gave them my ID, my driver's license, and I wrote down all the essential information, sent it to them. I mean, clearly they must have just checked me out, and I was who I said I was.
Sure.
You know, I'm like,
Sure.
I'm from Chelmsford, Massachusetts, Rhode Island School of Design. So, you know, all of the official Social Security. So I checked out, and she said, "That's great. You can sign the rest when you get here. You're in." They sent me like a receipt back. So it was great. I mean, everybody was cool. There was no mess ups or no showing up and the doors locked, you know.
But that's kind of unusual. I mean, especially I'm thinking in today's world, you know, to move that. I mean, you're moving coast to coast, and no contract, no, you know. But did you ever see yourself doing this? Okay, you went to Rhode Island School of Design, correct? I mean, is this what you had envisioned doing something like this? Was this like on a bucket list, or because this is huge?
Yeah, the timing was perfect. I mean, like I said, I grew up. I loved everything Disney growing up. Wonderful World of Disney, going to the drive-in or the movies to see the animated movies. I loved Warner Brothers, all the Looney Tunes. Still do. They're just some of the greatest ever. You know, back in the day, I mean, I was growing up, obviously, you know this, there was no cable or anything. So whatever was on after school or Saturday morning, you know, the original Scooby-Doos. I mean, my kids love that. I still love those, you know, things like that. But, you know, it was just after school stuff from decades earlier. I didn't even know it was like 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. It was timeless. We just laughed. We loved watching them. And animation was kind of disappearing through the 1980s. It almost, in a way, kind of died. The old guys had left Disney, were retiring, and everything was in flux. But like I said, there was Disney decided to kind of reboot everything, and the success of Tom Hanks in Splash ignited them to do The Little Mermaid. Touchstone Pictures with Steven Spielberg, they did that Family Dog one. And then really, I mean, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, just really all of those things happening at the same time were of such good quality that people caught on. You know, cartoons, I mean, for a long time it was like, oh, it's a cartoon show, it's for little kids. And then you start realizing, no, kids can enjoy it, but Roger Rabbit, no, is not just for kids. It's definitely, and even the original, we talked about this too, the Looney Tune cartoons really were never for kids. They were in movie theaters. I mean, they're shooting stuff and popping them on the head and having a drink at the bar. It's funny, but you forget that those really weren't for kids. And it took people a while to be like, wow, okay, these movies are a little more mature. They're great quality. And of course, The Simpsons, we came under fire a lot because it was just, nobody knew what to make of it. It's like, okay, it's an animated TV show on this new network, Fox, you know, that had Married with Children on it and things like that, that were breaking new ground.
Sure.
And so there was a lot of things, oh, don't let your kids watch it, this and that and whatever. But I loved the story. I loved the writing. I loved the characters were very real to me. Growing up watching classic television of the 1960s and 70s, you know, comedies or dramas like MASH and All in the Family. Which, I mean, All in the Family I know had a huge impact on Seth MacFarlane, who created Family Guy, who I've met. He went to Rhode Island School of Design, too. He graduated after me.
Okay.
But even the piano intro and everything was influenced by that. But anyway, all these shows and cable TV, like all this stuff was just happening right around 1989, 90, 91, 92, Ren and Stimpy, another one, you know, crazy show, but brilliant. And then, you know, then soon after SpongeBob SquarePants. And so all this stuff was expanding. And I think the networks, I remember at the time, were like, oh, animation is big, so let's do an animated show. And there was a whole bunch of stuff like Fish Police with John Ritter and all these shows that barely lasted an episode or two because they didn't get it. I don't know who they were writing for. It's like, oh, let's just do animation. It's easy, right? It's a cartoon, but it's not. It's the same as live action. You have to have chemistry and authenticity. You have to like the characters. And The Simpsons had all that stuff. And when I showed up, people thought I was crazy. Like you just said, flying across the country and leaving everything. And I told everybody, I'm like, look, if this doesn't work out, I can always go back, right? I can always go back. Sure. And even my second week on the show, I did get a call from Hallmark in Kansas City, Missouri, and where they were willing to hire me too. They saw that I loved to draw cartoons, and they had Peanuts and Garfield and Looney Tunes and all that stuff. And then they saw some of my stuff had a sense of humor, and they're like, "Oh, do you write funny things?" And I came up with a bunch of funny things for their funny greeting cards. So I could have done that, you know, to fall back on, and I wouldn't have minded it. I mean, that would have been fun too.
Sure.
But this was, The Simpsons, luckily I got the job when I did and made the choice, as soon as it happened, that I knew I wanted to be part of it. To answer your question, yes, I had always wanted, there was something in me that always wanted to come to Hollywood to hopefully work for Disney or do animated movies. There really wasn't much on TV at the time, so I wasn't thinking that. But how cool it would be to draw or design or create some of these great animated films or TV shows. And I just, when things started to open up, I'm like, wow, there's a shot. And when I saw The Simpsons, it was crazy. The timing was just, it was...
It's unbelievable, really.
Yeah, really.
Together,
My last semester at art school, and, I was working on a whole children's book project, and I met with my advisor, and I said, I love this, but can I stop this? And I'm changing what I'm doing. I want to get onto this animated TV show. And I explained to them, they hadn't heard of The Simpsons. They didn't know what it was. Most people didn't. And I explained it, and I showed them the tests and stuff. It only took me about 10, 15 minutes to tell them what was up. And I said, my goal here, I want to be part of the show. And even when I landed in Hollywood and met everybody who thought I was a little crazy, like, what are you going to do? Really, the first week I was there, well, what are you going to do when this is over? People are still saying that. I'm telling you. People are still wondering. We are...
After all these years.
Even now we're working on our season 32, and it is the last one picked up. We go through this all the time. So hopefully the shows look great, the scripts are great, and hopefully we're going to keep this going for a long time. Eventually there'll be a second movie. I know that, but everybody's concentrating on making a great television show. And now this is also the last season that's through Fox, so Disney's kind of going to be in charge of all this. But I've heard nothing but good things about all these Sunday night animated shows and the relationship with Disney and Fox and all that stuff. So I told everybody, I said, this show, The Simpsons, has exactly what you need to have a hit show. And I really believed from the beginning that the show could go at least 5 seasons and 100 episodes and syndicate for the rest of my life. I really thought that, and that's what I told everybody. And the show exploded over summer. We didn't have any new shows, so they kept rerunning all 13 episodes all summer until we got to September and the season 2 premiere happened.
Sure.
And by then the show was it was crazy. It was like a little piece of Beatlemania in a way. It was weird.
Yeah, very cool.
It was strange. We had crew jackets and people would be like, where did you get the crew jacket? But they were fans. It was like, cool. Like I said, I'm a fan as well of all the people I work with. And sure enough, during that summer, Fox realized we got to lock everybody in. So I forget when it was. It might have been like August, September. Fox signed us to do, I think, 72 shows and 3 seasons, which is really unprecedented, especially for an animated show.
Oh, yeah.
They signed us on for 3 more years, and, everybody celebrated. There's people that have been working, especially some of the older people that have been in the business since the 1960s and 70s, stuff I grew up with. That's pretty awesome job security, especially a show that was just getting better and better and better with every episode.
Oh, yeah. No, it's amazing how it continues to get better every year. And you answered a question I was going to ask you, because I've had discussions with this with different people, but a season can vary. But for The Simpsons, a season is about 25 episodes, 26?
We used to do, we used to do 24. One season we did 28. They added shows, and it was killing everybody. So what's basically happened at least the last 10, 12 years, we've been doing 22 shows.
Okay, and so that's a season.
Yeah, and the last 5 or 6 they're called holdovers. We hold them over for September and October. And then we start the new season. So we've got, even right now, the show, season 32 premieres this September 27th. I believe we have at least 6 shows that are done or mostly done. Yeah, including the Halloween show is mostly done. They're doing music and effects. So they're still working on the post-production of those things, but they're just, they're about ready to go. And then the first show that I just started, you probably will see in November, December, We're working about 7 months. Yeah, we're working about 7 months at a time.
Okay, that was my next question. So you're answering those questions, and you're living the dream, dude. I'm telling you, you are living the dream. I think it's very, very cool. Let me couple of questions before we lose sake of time. It's obvious we're going to have you back on. So there's just too much to talk about, because we haven't talked about music yet, and all of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So, and also, like, could I be like if there was an extra in Simpsons, like they had to bring this Italian character in or something, and you can design my clothes and stuff, right?
Sure, I know. We get that all the time.
I bet you do. No.
Once in a while, we get an approval to be on a show. Especially at the beginning, a lot of the animators and people, we'd stick ourselves, or they'd stick themselves in the background or whatever. The one cool thing, there was a show a few years ago with John Goodman and Henry Winkler. It was like a motorcycle gang show where Marge is kidnapped. And one of the producers said, I had nothing to do with this. He just said, make sure one of the motorcycle guys is Lance with a bandana, with a ponytail. I don't know if you can see it. It's dark in here. And sure enough, so if you ever, I forget the name of the episode, I'm sorry, but it's the one with the motorcycle gang. And toward the end, they're in a big fight and they're throwing motorcycles and everything. And in a couple of the shots, Homer turns around and picks me up over his head and throws me across a bush. So I'm still supposed to get a cell or two from that. It's like we don't do cells anymore.
I love it.
But one of the archive guys a few months ago was like, "Yeah, Lance, like we can look through the archives and see what we can find if you can narrow it down." I haven't done that yet, but so yes, I was in that show for a few seconds.
So is that your favorite? I was going to ask you about your favorite episode. Is that your favorite episode because you were in it?
Oh man, I'll say it's a lot. You mentioned how the show gets better and better, and I think everybody has different shows they like. When you're on a show 30 years, it ebbs and flows. There's different writers, different showrunners, and in my opinion, the show has never been bad. I don't think it's ever been close to bad. I think it ebbs and flows, and different people have different shows they love. But the quality of the writing has always been really, really good to amazing. And the artists, I know the artists have been very dedicated. We've rotated a few people over the years, and they've gone on to do other projects, which is awesome. But there's a handful of us that have been there since about the beginning, and I love it. And I would say, to me, real quickly, the original 13 episodes have an extremely special place in my heart. Those 13 changed my life and the course of my life. And when I watch those original 13 episodes, it just brings me back to the very, very beginning when I was just a fan like everybody else. But there's shows early on that really established The Simpsons as having heart and soul. Lisa's Substitute with Dustin Hoffman is an amazing episode. I did, Brush with Greatness, which I was so excited. They knew I was a big Beatle fan, and they asked me to design. Ringo as a guest star, and so they said, we want you to, make up Ringo's house and his den full of letters and gold records. Do whatever you want to do. And I remember asking the producer, I'm like, hey, can I get real pictures of Ringo's house? They're like, no, make it up. Again, this is before the internet. They're like, we're not bothering Ringo and Barbara. Just make it up. Look, whatever you think a Beatles house would be in England. So what you see is what you get. I made it up. And I did meet Barbara Bach. The kids and I have gone to some of the stuff. We sat there for one of the Ringo shows, and I told her that, and she thought it was great. And she said she would tell Ringo, which was pretty awesome. I love the Beatles. I know we could go on and on. And Paul and Linda McCartney.
We have to talk about that. Let me jump ahead just for the sake of time.
Sure.
Just to give a context to right now. How has COVID-19 affected you? Because you said you've already been working on episodes. So are you guys going into the studio? What does it look like? What does it look like for you in the last few months?
I'll say this. I think everybody's shocked with how well it's working out. I was one of the last couple artists and production people to leave the studio. We have a studio. Fortunately, it's a mile away here in Burbank, down the street, right by Warner Brothers and stuff like that. So I'm thankful for that. We were working in studio with everybody, and there's something very special about being there in person and interacting creatively and energy-wise. Yeah. So, but in the meantime, I will say this: of all the Sunday night, the animated shows, all of us, including The Simpsons, they did an incredible job. When we realized we were probably going to have to lock down the second week of March, the IT department, they figured out, I don't know what they did, but they did their magic. And they told us that we were probably going to have to, everybody move at home. Whatever they did, I'm even sitting here right now with my Cintiq, which is the computer we draw on with a pen tool, and the Mac. And basically, they loaded everything up with the equipment. I only had to come a mile, but everybody, all the production people, all the artists and animators and everybody, there's about 120 of us, believe it or not. And we're working on 6, 7, 8 shows at a time with 7, 8 different directors. It's an assembly line. So some shows we were just getting the script and starting storyboarding and design. And some shows were like trying to put all the animation together and ship out to Korea where they color things and do the in-between animation.
Okay.
So without missing a beat, I mean, it really worked out well. I mean, that you asked the biggest thing about COVID. We've done a couple of Zoom calls to make sure everybody's doing fine and say hi to the design department and see how we do communicate and text, and we do have Skype here and stuff. It's not the same, but I am so thankful that we're all able to work. I mean, I literally set this up. They kicked us out on a Thursday night. I think it was like March 19th or something. And I set this up here, made space here in my house, and everything came on and everything worked. And I was able to log in. We're able to log in each morning. And we're all connected. We're all connected. And somehow we're getting these shows done. Matter of fact, I was told that the first new show came back in color, and it just looks amazing. I mean, everybody is really excited about it. We miss each other, but so far it's working out, and I'm thankful for that.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, we're going to have to bring our combo to a close, unfortunately, but definitely I'll be in touch with you to get you back on if we can take some more time of yours, because there's so much we could talk about. But we're looking now, school is starting in some form or another. And I know a lot of our audience is frustrated. I mean, a lot of colleges are online except for labs. I heard a thing saw something, a news feed today that said something about, parents tell your kids maybe to take a, kind of a buffer year. Don't go start college because of the way everything is messed up. High school, it's just, I know I do school assemblies. You and I were talking about that the other night, and can't do them. We're looking at doing some video stuff that we can get into schools and get to students and everything else. What would you say to our audience? What kind of attitude should we have as we're facing this unknown, abnormal, school year, or at least a partial year? I mean, yes, you're in a different situation, but what kind of nugget of advice would you give to those that are saying, man, I'm frustrated, because that's not going to help, and not to be critical, because I know I can get that way. And, sometimes something needs to slap me upside the head and say, hey, come on, dude. What would you say, since you've been enduring this and
Well, it's funny you bring up what you did real quickly, because in a way, I mean, yes, I'm thankful to be working, and I communicate with a lot of family and friends who are working, but many who are not. And I completely understand. I'm grateful, but I realize that, regardless of what situation you're in, and it's easier said than done. So I do have compassion for people. Do whatever you can to stay healthy and your family. Again, you've heard the mantra about staying inside, wearing a mask and everything. Does it work? Does it not work? Well, a lot of this is common sense. I think, my kids and I do have four kids. I have 2 boys and 2 girls, and 3 of them have graduated high school. My youngest daughter, I'll just say a quick, Nathan, Jessica, Jacob, and Miranda. But my son Jacob was supposed to start at UMass Lowell, and we had to make it. So we are going through this because
so you are as a family.
We made the tough decision, and we're going through it right now. We messaged the school that we're going to postpone it for a year with him to go back to UMass Lowell. He's a my 2 boys are musicians. My daughters are into art and music and singing, and very creative kids.
And one of your sons is a drummer, so he's going to connect one of these days.
Yes, my oldest is a great drummer, has this beautiful DW kit out back in the studio. And my younger son's a guitar player and a producer, and is going for engineering and music and recording, sound and all that stuff. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, we can get into it next time, but the art and the music, to see my kids doing this, it's awesome how that's rubbed off. But to get back to your point, it is tough. We are going through that because having to make these tough decisions. My youngest daughter is about to start her junior year. I said, well, your junior, senior year, you're in the second half, but really try to keep positive. There's a lot of good stuff. If you focus on the bad stuff, it's only going to bring you down. That doesn't mean you hide it or don't address it or talk about it, but don't get stuck in it. Keep positive. Yes. And look for there's more positive than bad. That doesn't mean it's not tough. That doesn't mean you have to deal with stuff. I understand that. But it's so easy to get bummed out and depressed. It's really a lie or a partial truth. Don't get stuck in that. You've got family, you've got friends. You say something and you realize, wow, you're going through that too? You think that too? I'm not alone?
Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. And I tell that to my kids and their friends, and it's like, wow, okay, I get it. We're in this together. I know that sounds like a bumper sticker, but we are in this. But we are. We are in this together.
We are.
And one day at a time. And there's a lot of good happening, and there are changes that are taking place. But I even told my younger daughter, I'm like, okay, we're going to start the school year online, okay? You did a great job in the spring to finish sophomore year.
Sure.
And it was tough, but they're working out some of the bugs. I really believe this is temporary. As things open up and get better and safer and, you know, the medicines and things, that let's just go through this, and it's going to get better. And as things do, they're going to open up. And I also think, I got to say, I have a lot more appreciation for just a lot of the things I took for granted, just coming and going as I please, or a concert or a ball game or whatever. Disneyland, we miss Disneyland. You know, it's funny, but I miss being with people, and I look forward to that. And I think we are going to be there soon. But in the meantime, just be safe.
Thank you.
And
no, I mean, Lance, that is such good advice, solid. And, you know, somebody in the audience said there's always a positive for every negative, which is what you were kind of saying. And great advice. I mean, great advice. Thank you. I appreciate that, because it's too easy to just be overwhelmed and, you know, drag yourself down. And that's kind of how I came up with the idea of you know, I was frustrated. I can't do schools. Why can't I want to get into schools. I want to be with students. I want to play my DW kit, you know, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I thought, wait a minute, bad attitude, pal. Okay, what can you do? So I started talking to friends, educators, and law enforcement, and, you know, people are saying, do some video stuff, Russo. You know, put it in the schools. You can get it in people's houses. You know, you can do it in modulars, and, you know, all kind. But anyway, you just encapsulated it so well. I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Thanks.
And it's real life stuff for you. It's not like, okay, I'm going to take this idea and throw it out there. So thank you. This has been great. This has been a great time with you. I knew it would be. So we definitely going to have you back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Steve. Awesome.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
This is Utalk Radio.